What's up, everybody? We're back with another edition of Everyday Hoops. Hope you guys are having a good one. Today, we're doing a video that I did, doing a part 2 to a video I did recently. Teams that are hot and teams that are not. 2 weeks ago, I made a video talking about some teams that are hot and teams that were not at that point of the season, but now, a couple weeks later, coming after All-Star break, every team is about 5-6 games in. Talk about some teams that have been great since coming out of the All-Star break and teams that have not been great since coming out of the All-Star break. We're going to talk about that here in today's video. Thank you guys for the views on the videos and the shorts recently. I really appreciate it. We just hit 550 subscribers, so thank you guys. Really appreciate it a whole lot. If you do like the content around here, consider subscribing, turn notifications and all stuff like that. I really appreciate it. Really does that a lot. Link to my Twitter in the description down below. And don't waste any more of your time. Let's get right into it. So if you don't know how this works, you didn't watch the last one, basically going to go back and forth talking about team that's hot, team that's not. We'll do that. We have 4 teams for each category. And we're going to start it now, starting with teams that are hot. We're going to go with the Boston Celtics. I know I just made a video about them the other day, talking about how good they've been. If you missed that one, you can go back and check it out. But we'll talk about them a little bit more here in today's video. They have won 11 games in a row. They have the longest winning streak in the NBA this season. And last night, they just beat the Warriors by 52 points. That was just an utterly dominant performance. Put up 140. They put up 44 in the first quarter, 38 in the second quarter. They were up by 40 going into halftime. The Warriors didn't play Steph, Clay, and Dre in the second half of this game. Boston utterly dominated Golden State last night. And they've been the best team in the NBA for the entirety of the year. They've been number 1 in every power ranking video I've done. They're 48-12 through 60 games. They are 8.5 games above the number 2 seed in the East. And they're 6 games above the 2nd seed in the NBA. So they've been just dominating away, just pulling away with the lead in the NBA right now. And they've been hot. They're finally, starting to put together a long win streak. And, we'll just see how long this win streak goes for at this point. I mean, they've just been utterly dominant. There's not really much more to say about it. Now we're going to go to a team that's not hot, a team that's literally on the other end of that, the Washington Wizards. The Wizards have lost 14 games in a row. And they're tied with the Detroit Pistons for the worst record in the NBA at 9-51. They have not won a game since January 29th. So it's been a little over a month since they've won a game. They went winless in February. And their schedule's been really hard. After that, they won back-to-back games against the Pistons and the Spurs. And then after that, they lost 14 in a row. Their game, listen to their opponents since their last win against the Spurs. Since January 31st, they played the Clippers, Heat, Suns, Cavs, Celtics, Sixers, Mavericks, Pelicans, Nuggets, Thunder, Cavs again, Warriors again. Oh no, they played the Warriors. No, this first time they played the Warriors. Lakers, Clippers again. So they've literally faced off against 14 good teams in a row and haven't won since. They do have an easier part of their schedule coming up, which crazy to say easier, even though they're the worst team in the NBA. They play the Jazz tonight, which maybe could sap the win streak, and if it doesn't, then they play Orlando, which is going to be tough. Then they play Charlotte. They play Memphis. They play Houston. So they get some easier easier games. And but they're very bad. They're very bad. I made a prediction. I said it in a couple videos now. I made the prediction. I said, the Wizards are going to finish worse than the Pistons this year, and so far they're tied. So they have the advantage over the Pistons, but they have been utterly, completely just horrible. And there's not really much more to say about that. Going back to a team that's hot, the Milwaukee Bucks are starting to put it together. Of course, they fired Andrew Griffin. They hired Doc Rivers. They go 3-7 in the first 10 games out with Doc Rivers on the team. They go to All-Star break. They come back from All-Star break, and they haven't lost a game since. They won 5 games in a row against some not amazing opponents. They beat the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's a good win for them. But after that, the other 4, Philly without Joel, Charlotte back-to-back, Chicago. Not the best competition, but hey. Wins are wins. You got to beat the bad teams in order to be good. But the Bucks are starting to put together. They won 5 in a row. They're 40-21. They've taken over as the second spot in the Eastern Conference, and they look a lot better. Their defense, they've held opponents to under 100 points in 4 straight games, which is by far the most this season. In their last 8 games, they've held opponents to under 100 5 times. So, in their last 9 games, they held opponents to under 106 times in the last 9. So, that's a good sign right there. They've won all those games, absolutely. But they've been starting to put it together. Doc Rivers has the defense looking at. The defense is 16th right now. So it's an average defense, which is good. Giannis is playing like an MVP level player. You know, they've gotten contribution from guys like Bobby Portis, Malik Beasley, you know, Jay Crowder. They look a lot better, you know, and they're starting to put together. And now this could be the run where maybe they could start, you know, going to the next level. I'm gonna get more in depth on it because I'm thinking about making a video about the Bucks soon. They do play the Clippers tonight, which is gonna be a big game. If they do beat the Clippers in that game, then they have a tough schedule. Their next couple games they play the Clippers, the Warriors, the Lakers, the Clippers again, the Kings. For their next 5 games, they go on their Cali trip. You know, besides tonight, after that, they go on the Cali trip. And that's going to be a big determining factor on what this Bucks team is going to be. They have one of the harder schedules left in the league. But they're starting to put it together recently. Going back to a team that's not hot, the Dallas Mavericks, who were on a 7-game win streak, were looking great. I was talking highly of them. And since then, they've lost 4 of their last 5 games. They're 2-3, or 2-4. This is coming out of the All-Star break. They got a good win against Phoenix, and then they lost to Indiana, lost to Cleveland on a Max Juice game winner, got beat by Boston, and last night a tough loss to the 76ers at home. Yeah, it's been really tough for them. You know, the offense hasn't been amazing. Luka's been great, but their offense hasn't been amazing. Their defense hasn't been that amazing either. You know, they brought in Gaffney and Washington, which I like the comparison, but now those two are starting to kind of fall a little bit. P.J. Washington hasn't really found his shot since getting to Dallas. You know, some of their shooters, guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. hasn't been great in the last couple games. Kyrie didn't have a great game last night against Philly. You know, Luka had a lot of turnovers last night as well. That was a really ugly, tough loss for them. And yeah, am I worried about them? Not a whole lot. You know, because they still have Luka Doncic. They still have a good team that I really like. And with the West being so close, they can win 2 or 3 games and jump up, because right now they're sitting at 8th. They're a game out of the 7th spot, but they're also only a game and a half out of the 9 and 10 spot. So it's really, really tough, you know, but I still have confidence in this Mavericks team, you know. They're just going through a little rough stretch, and honestly, I feel like with this team, with the team they have, rough stretches are kind of going to be a thing, because they have so many streaky kind of shooters and guys like that, where it's going to be tough to win consecutively in a row. I feel like with this type of team, even though they did do it just recently, but they have not been hot since coming out of the All-Star break. But I'm not super worried about them. Back to a team that's hot, we have the Denver Nuggets. They are 6-0 since coming out of the All-Star break. They've been dominant, and not just 6-0 and winning by the grid. They've won out of their 6 games, 5 of them they've won by double figures. The only team they didn't win by double figures is Miami. They won by 6, but they beat the Wizards by 20, the Blazers by 15, the Warriors by 17. The Kings by 21, the Lakers by 10. They've been dominant. They've looked like the championship team. I feel like I said it a couple times already, but the first half of the season, I felt like they kind of were just chilling, even though they were still a top 3 seed, top 4 seed in the West. They're just kind of chilling. You know, they weren't really full foot on the gas. You know, they're still winning games, still being good, but they weren't full foot on the gas. But now, coming out of the All-Star break, they're doing what championship and veteran teams do, which is like, all right, they know this is the home stretch of the season. Let's go out and let's do this thing. And they've been down. They've won 6 in a row. Now all of a sudden they're tied with Minnesota for the 2nd seed in the West, and they're only a half game behind OKC. You know, they've been dominant. I am probably gonna make a video about them eventually, so I'm not gonna talk about them super in depth in this one. Their next 2 games they play Phoenix and Boston. You know, so after those 2 games, we're really gonna see what this team is like. Especially I'm tuned in for that Celtic game. That better be a TV game. If I'm not, I'm gonna be super. Yeah, that's 10 o'clock. That's TNT. Yeah, I'm on there. We're watching that game because, man, that's going to be a good one. But, yeah, they've just been dominant. Jokic right now is MVP leader. Michael Porter Jr. is averaging like 22 points per game. Since coming to the All-Star break, he's been on fire as well. And, yeah, this team is just they're doing that thing again where they come out and they're just like, yeah, no one's going to beat us, you know. Back to a team that's not hot, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cavaliers, before the All-Star break, they won 18 of their last 20 games. They were looking like an unstoppable force. But since coming out of the All-Star break, they are 3-4. They had a tough loss last night to the Knicks on ESPN when Jalen Brunson went down the first 30 seconds, and they still couldn't get the win. Very hard game. Shout out to the Knicks. Shout out to Josh Hart, Miles McBride, making some big shots and plays. But, yeah, they have not looked great since coming out of the All-Star break. And also, factor in Donovan Mitchell hasn't played in every game. Donovan Mitchell's out of the 7 games. I think he's only played in like 3 of them. Out of 7 games, I think they won all 3. Well, no, they went 2-1. They lost that double overtime game to Chicago, where they gave up 76 rebounds. But they have not looked as amazing, which I said it was going to be tough to replicate that because, I mean, going 18-2 in 20 games, That's really hard to do. So I was saying in my predicting the second half of the season, I was like, I don't know if we're gonna see that. This is gonna be good, but I don't know if we're gonna see that. They have some tough losses. You know, lost to Philly in Philadelphia, lost a tough one to Orlando where they just couldn't hit shots. They're only won 3 because Max Strus hit a 60-foot shot to win that game, but they probably should have lost that game to Dallas. You know, lost a double overtime to Chicago. Detroit game wasn't even a dominant one. Even they played Washington, Detroit. They won both those games, but they didn't look dominant. You know, Washington and Detroit kind of hung around at some points and only lost by 10 and 9. You know, so Cleveland hasn't looked as sharp. You know, Darius Garland is still trying to find his rhythm. I feel like Evan Mobley's been all right. He's still trying to find his rhythm. Jared Allen hasn't been great. And again, without Donovan Mitchell, this team just looks a lot different, is what I've seen so far throughout these few games. That Donovan Mitchell is probably a lot more valuable than we think he is, even though this team is so good all around. You know, Donovan Mitchell is super, super valuable. When Donovan Mitchell's on this team and playing, this team is just on a whole new level, which makes sense because Donovan Mitchell is one of the best players in the league. But they just have not been great. They have a tough matchup against Boston tomorrow, so we're going to see. I mean, I still think they're a good team. It's just they have not looked as sharp coming out of All-Star break. Last thing we're talking about that's hot is the Orlando Magic. The Magic, they went through a rough kind of January-ish type of stretch, early February, going to All-Star break, kind of limped their way in there. But it's coming out of All-Star break. They won 5 of their 6 games. Just coming out of All-Star break, they got a good win in Cleveland. They haven't had the best competition, which coming out of All-Star break, they had the easiest remaining schedule left. Right now, they have the 3rd easiest schedule left in the league, which was what I was saying when I made my predicting the second half of the season video, saying that Orlando might go on a little run and might get better in the second half of the year because they have easy schedule. I mean, their 6 games they played, you know, so coming to All-Star break, they play Cleveland, then they play Detroit, Atlanta, Brooklyn, Utah, Detroit. And their next 2 games, they play Charlotte and they play Washington. So they should stack up some easy ones. And then after that, it gets kind of tough. Then they play New York, Indiana for 2 games. But then they go on another easy stretch. They play Brooklyn, Toronto back-to-back, and Charlotte. You know, they have a really tough, like, the only tough games they have to worry about is the last couple games of the season, honestly. They have a stretch where they play Sacramento, Golden State, the Clippers, and Pelicans. Then they have a stretch where they play Milwaukee, Philly, and Milwaukee the last 3 games of the season, which is going to be tough. But then again, we don't know because Milwaukee and Philly might already have their spots. You know, well, Milwaukee might have their spot already, you know, kind of clinched, and they might sit some of their guys in the last couple games. Who knows? But Orlando's been hot. 5 of their 6, they've been dominating. Even though Paolo hasn't been amazing, even though he had a really good game last night, they're still finding ways to win games. Their defense is still elite. They held Brooklyn to 81 points, Detroit to 91 points. Like, they're still an elite defense. And if their offense is kind of going, then, you know, they're going to be really, really good. But they also have been a really good offense since coming out of the All-Star break. Right now they're sitting at 6th in the East. And honestly, they're not that far out. They're only a half game out of the 5th seed. And they're only a game out of the 4th seed. 4 through 8 is, like tight in the Eastern Conference. So Orlando could make something. If Orlando finishes a top 5 seed, man, that's gonna be very, very interesting to see what they look like in the playoffs. And the final team we're talking about that's not hot has been the Phoenix Suns. The Suns had the hardest schedule, still have the hardest schedule left in the NBA. So far since coming to the All-Star break, they're 2-4. 2 losses. They played the Rockets 3 times and lost 2 of those games. You can't really have that, even though Houston, again, is a respectable team. You know, still, those are really tough losses. Both those games. Last night, tough loss to OKC. You know, even though they did make a comeback, but, you know, it's tough. And, it doesn't get easier for me. They have the hardest schedule left. They play Denver on Tuesday. Then they get Toronto, but then they play Boston 2 out of 3 games. They play Boston, Cleveland, Boston, back-to-back-to-back. Then they play Charlotte, but then they play Milwaukee, Philly. San Antonio twice isn't easy because now San Antonio's starting to win some games. Look at their, oh my God, 3, 6, 7, 8. Their last 10 games of the season. These are their last 10 games. They play Denver, OKC, New Orleans, all on the road. They come back home and play Cleveland, Minnesota, New Orleans, the Clippers. Then they go back on the road and play the Clippers, Kings, and Timberwolves again for their last 3 games. So that last 10-game stretch is tough, especially in a tough Western Conference where right now they're sitting at, I think, the 7th spot in the West or the 6th spot. The 7th spot in the West, and they're tied for 6th, and they're only a game out of the 8th spot, a game out of the 5th spot. In that tough Western Conference, those last 10 games are going to be crucial. That can change their season right there. That could change them from being a 6th seed to being a 9th seed, potentially, depending on how the Warriors and Lakers and them do. That is a very hard schedule left. And they have not looked great. They haven't had the full big three together. Bradley Beal missed some time, but then came back in that Houston game. Then he got ejected. Now Devin Booker's hurt. It's like, man, we can never get a full healthy stretch of all these three guys playing. Someone's always out of the lineup, and now it's Devin Booker. So who knows when he's gonna come back. So yeah, this is really tough for Phoenix. Yeah, these last couple games are gonna be really hard. I said it in my predicting the second half season video. I was like, this is where we're really gonna see who the Phoenix Suns are as a team. And right now, it has not looked great, but we'll see what happens in the future. But right now, they have not looked amazing. But yeah, it's gonna be it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Once again, if you enjoyed the content around here, consider subscribing, like, turn notifications, also like that. I'd really appreciate it. Really upset a lot. And yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow.